apologies for any background noises that might seem louder than usual. I have my window open just because I felt a little stuffy in my room. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shenanigans Show. So this video is slightly more talky than my other videos, but that's not something I mind because this video has been something I've been wanting to do for a while now. Before I get into today's topic though, I have a book of the month box to open because, you know, that's how it goes. So in a couple of my videos, I had mentioned how I had the 2 credit per month plan for book of the month. And for the time being, I have gone back to the 1 credit per month plan, the $15 plan. That's just what I need to do right now. It's so pretty. So this is all of the book of the month finalists, and the lolly goes to Abby Jimenez's yours truly. The other finalists were None of This Is True, Shark Heart, Wayward, and The Wishing Game. I'm just gonna say that the premise for Shark Heart, this one, was so weird. It seemed interesting, but it was also so weird. So this is the bookmark. Let's get to the BOTM of this, the bottom of this. I think that's really clever. The first book that I picked up was because of my BFF status with book of the month. I got to add one of the finalists to my box, and I chose The Wishing Game by Meg Schaffer. I am a little bit nervous about this one because it does have footnotes, which I learned about in a video I watched recently, and I am nervous about that now. But this does sound very interesting, very promising. It's not my usual genre, but we'll see how it goes. And then the book that I chose for March was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. And this is the first book of the saga of the Unfated. And this book has been marketed, I haven't seen too much about it outside of the book of the month circles and social media, but this has been marketed as a romantasy, which is not my go-to genre. If I'm going to dip into fantasy, I would prefer fantasy romance rather than romance fantasy romantasy. But the plot of this one definitely seemed interesting, and it's set in a Viking-esque setting, so I am looking forward to this one. We'll see how it goes, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous, so I'm really happy about that. And then the book I'm currently reading is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. So far, I'm really enjoying this. I've only read the prologue, but it is really interesting, that little tidbit that we got from the prologue. I'm just gonna see where this goes. I'm really hoping that I really enjoy this book and that it goes well for me, because this is basically right up my alley. As you can tell from the title of this video, I will be talking about why I prefer Storygraph over Goodreads and why I've just stopped all out using Goodreads. A little bit of a disclaimer, even though I feel like I shouldn't have to do this because it should be obvious, but it might not be. Making this video and posting it is not a way to bash or trash Goodreads. It's not a way to bring down Goodreads in any way. It's just for me to talk about why I prefer Storygraph over Goodreads now. If Goodreads still works for you, go for it. Keep using Goodreads. You do you. This is my own personal reasoning, and this is coming from having used Goodreads for close to 10 years now, maybe a little bit under, but very close to 10 years. And I've started using Storygraph within the past 2-ish years. I started using it more consistently in 2023, but I definitely started using it sometime in 2022. As I've said, if you want to keep using Goodreads, please do that. This is just my own personal opinion about the 2 apps. And also, before I get into the main portion of the video, Goodreads is good for what it is. It has its uses, it has its benefits, but for me, a lot of those benefits ended up falling short, especially once I started using the Storygraph more consistently. And I often found myself comparing the 2 and finding the Storygraph better for me. Now, Goodreads did make a lot of things very easily because it is owned by Amazon. It made things easier to keep track of. On the whole, I would say that Goodreads being owned by Amazon made lists and tracking easier over multiple apps, over multiple sites. Goodreads being owned by Amazon made things easier to overlap between multiple sites all owned by the company that owns Amazon. It made things easier to kind of overlap as time went on. You could easily bring lists of books over from Amazon to Goodreads and vice versa. It was easy to be like, oh, I'll just go buy this book on Amazon through a click of the button on Goodreads, and you could easily find the book on Goodreads through Amazon. So it did have a lot of little positive notes, a lot of little good notes, but for me it wasn't really adding up to being all out positive. On the whole, like, I can't say that my experience with Goodreads was negative, because it wasn't. I don't think I can really say I had a good time or a great time with Goodreads. It definitely served its purpose, and a lot of good did come out of it for me, and a lot of community building and finding new books to read. But I feel like a lot of the things about Goodreads were very basic. I feel that was fully a result of it being bought and owned by Amazon. That it became kind of second thought or even third thought to Amazon, where it's like, okay, it's already set up, it's already doing what it needs to do, so Amazon didn't need to mess with it or update it. I can see Goodreads not making as much money to make investing in it and updating it worth it for Amazon. I can see that being some of the reasoning. I could 100% see Goodreads doing like a plus plan, like the way Storygraph does. I could see Amazon profiting a good deal off of like a Goodreads plus plan, like the way Storygraph does, where you get added benefits and perks to using Goodreads and to using a plus plan that's paid for, maybe a minimal payment each month. But again, like as I said, it kind of became, Goodreads as a whole kind of became second, third thought even to the company, because it probably, like, even though it probably makes money due to all the traction and the accounts and the books and yada yada yada, it probably doesn't make as much money as the other companies owned by Amazon or partnering with Amazon. But as I said, I did have a pretty good experience with Goodreads. There was nothing outright wrong with it or bad with it. It just wasn't what I needed. Once I started using it more consistently, I found myself enjoying it more. I found myself building a more intentional reading community with the Storygraph, because I was intentionally trying to seek out people who I already followed or were mutuals with on bookish social media. I was intentionally trying to find friends who maybe have similar interests in me, readers who have similar tastes as I do with books and genres and main characters and so on. And with the Storygraph, with the basic free plan, it is very customizable, even with something as simple as basic as the free version. You get to see personalized stats and not just like how many books you read in that specific year. I know Goodreads did like the shortest book, the longest book, and then other like little details like that, like the first book, the last book, the most read, the least read book. I know they did little statistics like that, but I feel like the Storygraph's statistics are so much more dynamic and versatile. Like you could see what the longest books you read were within a certain page range, or the shortest ones, or what genres you're most reading from, and it breaks down, I feel like it breaks down those categories much more efficiently and easily understood than Goodreads did. And you can also see your average star ratings, and you can also look at specific months out of each year. Like you can look at January, February, March through December. Right now you can only see March because it's only March, but you can see the specific statistics for each individual month. And I think with the plus plan you get even more statistics and even more personalization with the statistics. Something else that I personally really enjoy about the Storygraph is that it is highly personalized book recommendations and genre recommendations. Whereas like Goodreads, you can select like which genres you liked, but then it was just kind of like out the window with whatever books you would get within those genres. Like you would get the vast majority of books. Where with the Storygraph, you can select like, okay, these are the genres I like, this is what I like reading about, this is what I don't like reading about, this is the kind of thing I like to see, see, and then it gives you more personalized book recommendations based on what you say. And you can also insert like what could possibly be triggering for you, like your own trigger warnings. And then if you're looking at a book, it shows a little triangle next to the book, and if you tap on the triangle, it says that this book contains content that might be triggering or sensitive for you, which Goodreads didn't do. And on top of like the triggering content warning, like inserting your own, readers can also include content warnings and trigger warnings in a specific section of their review. It says like, are there any trigger warnings, content warnings that you think are applicable? I don't do that too much just because I don't really get triggered by a whole lot. I do get triggered by some stuff, but I don't have a whole lot of content that sets me off like some other readers do, understandably so. And there is a content warning section on the book's page, no matter what format you choose. There is a content warning section that you can look at to see if there are any triggering topics. And for the content warnings, the trigger warnings, readers, when they're doing their reviews, can categorize them by graphic, moderate, and mild, which I feel really helps as well, because readers can go in and say like, okay, this has the death of a parent, which could be triggering, but a lot of readers have mainly categorized that as mildly triggering. So maybe I'll do a little bit more research and I can possibly test out the waters with such and such book that has that trigger, which I really like and I appreciate, even though, as I said, I don't have a lot of things that are triggering for me. That's something I still appreciate, because there are topics that definitely make me a little bit nervous. It's nice being able to have that very easily accessible instead of trying to find a book on various websites to figure out what that book's content warnings are. And I also mentioned, while I was talking a little bit about that, was the formats. On Goodreads, you mainly just select that you're reading a book. Most books don't have like various formats, and if they do, they're categorized as like different books, which on the one hand I guess is sort of understandable, because it's like the different formats usually have slightly different ISBNs depending on how the author approached it. But more often than not, it's like you can't differentiate between what type of book you're reading, the format, whereas on the Storygraph you can differentiate if you're reading an audiobook, an ebook, a paperback, a hardback. You can differentiate, and that is also one of the statistics that you can do as well, where it's like how many books were audio, how many books were digital, the ebooks, how many books were physical. Something else I've been trying to do as well is marking which books I own at the time that I'm reading them. That also kind of helps me pursue the goal of trying to read more through Libby and Hoopla, trying to read more through libraries, and trying not to buy as many books, because honestly it's sometimes kind of nice to utilize your libraries in whatever way you can if you're able to. But marking books as owned is something you can do in the Storygraph, and then that's also another statistic you can see in the app, which I find really nice, and that's not something that Goodreads did. And even though that's not something that I missed during the time when I was just using Goodreads, looking at it now that I've been able to do that and I've been doing it more consistently, it is so nice being able to mark books as owned versus unowned, and then being able to see that statistic and kind of gauging like, okay, is this something I can like fix a little bit more, and trying to borrow more from local libraries if able to. I am in a position where I'm able to borrow more from my local libraries and through Libby and through Hoopla, so that is something that I'm trying to hold myself accountable for by marking books as owned or unowned when I'm reading them. I feel like that may have been a little bit confusing, but you basically can go to the specific book and mark it as owned. You don't necessarily mark it as unowned, but you just mark it as owned. And then not marking it as such basically means that you don't own it at the time that you're reading it. So for me personally, this video, I feel like it was a little bit all over the place and kind of more chatty, train of thought-esque, but that's kind of how I wanted this video to be, because I wanted to be able to talk about this a little bit more. If you use Storygraph and you use Goodreads, let me know down below what your thoughts are, because I would love to hear other opinions. Like if you disagree with me, if you agree with me but for different reasons, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.